understands what our goals, wants, and needs are, and literally provides us with the confidence to know that there's really no reason for you to go anyplace else. Not because I couldn't, but because A, I trusted him at the moment. I liked him because he was conversational and personable, and frankly, he knew what he was talking about. The problem that we have in our business is that we think that we're special. We think that we have all the right things to say, but I'm going to give you a piece of advice and tell you that we don't. And I learned this through a very brutal process of failing miserably over and over again until I finally got it right. And the one thing that makes you different, Scott, than every other loan officer at this company or anybody else in your market, there's only one quality that makes you and I different. If you and I were competing for the same client, I believe that I have a better chance at securing them as a client, not because of rates, not because of fees, not because of any other reason besides one thing, and that is my ability to articulate my value. The words that come out of my mouth are what makes me different than you. That is the only thing that our industry provides each and every one of us as a differentiation tool. We don't have any other way. We can't talk about honesty, sincerity, hardworking, returning calls, because when a client is asking themselves in their head, why should I use you? You don't have the ability to prove to them anything except for your ability to communicate your value in a way that gets people to believe what you believe. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
So when we sit down in front of clients, if we're not willing to act as, and you'll learn this over the next several weeks, Scott, and Suzanne, I think maybe you and I have even talked about this, we have what's called a consultant role that we need to play with our clients. And the consultant role is not a sales role. It's not a order taker role. It's not anything other than a person who recognizes that your number one priority is to help the borrower decide what's in it, what is their best course of action. And you'll hear me say this, guys, over and over again. I never believed that I was the best loan officer for every borrower that ran across my desk. Not every client that was referred to me was I the best loan officer for. But I did believe that every client that I talked to, I was the best person for them to talk to help figure out what their best options were. And even if it meant that it didn't mean that I got the loan, I always did what was right by the client. And here's why, and here's the secret. Suzanne, you've heard me talk about how amplifying relationships was really my goal. My job and my business model was built around this philosophy called the triangle of trust, Scott. And the triangle of trust is really simply this. My goal was to get the person who was referred to me, so in this case, let's say it's you, Scott. My goal is to get you, Scott, to go back to Brian and say thank you. That means that my agenda of doing whatever it is that I'm supposed to do for you plays a very distant third behind A, you going back to Brian and saying thank you, and B, you being compelled to want to refer me to somebody else in your life that you care about. I believe that if I'm capable of doing that with every person that I talk to, then my business will flourish. And as Gary Vaynerchuk says, I will continue to what I call expand my brand. The reality is that we fail to convey that message to our clients. And the clients, whether it be, and when I say clients, that means realtors, anybody in your actual consumer, we don't really do a very good job of outlining our value to them. Because frankly, we don't have a value to them. We have rhetoric and adjectives that we throw at them, but none of them qualify our value to them. They don't know what they don't know. And frankly, we don't know what they don't know because we never play the role of being a consultant. So the goal with these classes over the next several weeks, Scott and Suzanne, is to help you guys learn how to develop a conversation and an intentional dialogue with your clients that allows you to position yourself to be the consultant, that allows you to be that guy that met me at Home Depot, who then I didn't question anything because I trusted them and believed they wanted the same thing that I did. And the only way we have that ability is by creating a conversation or a value proposition that attracts them to us. And so my belief is that my business model was built around this triangle of trust. So let's use Brian and your relationship, Scott. If I'm able to get you to go back to Brian and say thank you, what does that do between you and Brian?
Well, it makes him very thankful that he sees that I'm getting a value out of this.
Okay. And what do you see in Brian?
I see a person that I trust an awful lot for caring about me.
Bingo. There you go. You have now, between you and Brian, because you go back to him and say thank you, you two have amplified your relationship. You didn't amplify it by anything you did. He didn't amplify it by really anything he did, except give you a referral or a recommendation. What it does is it puts me into the position that I can control whether or not your relationship with Brian rises and falls. And if I'm a person of good character and high integrity, I'm going to do everything in my power to consult with you to figure out what your goals, wants, and needs are, and then depending on what those answers are, give you the advice and the consulting and direction that you need so that when we're done talking, irregardless if it makes me money or not, directly, you go back to Brian and say thank you. Now here's the cool part of this whole thing. Because I'm doing that for you, what do you now think of me?
You're a hero.
Possibly, but you trust me because you now realize that it's not about me. Like, I'm not in it to make money. I'm not in it for me, which is what a lot of consumers worry about, that I'm only a transaction, that I'm only a series of digits, and that there is no real connection. And if I'm buying a house, I want to trust the person I'm working with, right?
Absolutely.
So my relationship with you, because of how I'm consulting with you, undoubtedly becomes amplified. You have a higher level of trust in me. I believe that you won't go out there and compare everybody else. You know, you're not going to compare me to everybody else. What you're going to do is compare everyone else to me. So you're going to have a conversation with anybody else you're going to be interviewing for a mortgage, and you're not going to get the same level of connection just because of this little dialogue that I'm explaining to you. So back to the triangle. So I've done a great job for you. Our relationship is very well established. You trust me and believe me and see the value of what I'm doing because I'm making it about your relationship with Brian. Now here's the piece of it that is so cool. What happens between the relationship between Brian and I? It goes through the room.
Absolutely.
It amplifies. Because you go back to Brian and say thank you, Brian now feels good. He believes what I believe. He looks good in front of you. You look good in front of him. And now my relationship with Brian is amplified. What happens if I'm able to do that for Brian every time he refers somebody to me? I'm going to get more referrals, aren't I?
Absolutely.
My final year of originating business, I closed just north of $15 million in loan volume with one assistant, and that was in 2012. 63% of my business that year came from past clients and current clients. I'm not a professional coach, but I know what works, and I know what consumers are looking for, and I know what our audience is after. It isn't rates, fees, turn times. Those are all great examples of how much we care and how good we are at our job. But our job is to close loans. But what we do for a living, in my opinion, is we amplify relationships. You want to sit down in front of a client and get them to trust you and not treat you like a commodity? Then get them to believe what you believe. Get them to see the bigger picture. And Scott, I know that most of your business is referred to you. So every time a client is referred to you, are you amplifying the relationship, not by accident? Because a lot of us do this just accidentally. We go out and we do a really good job, and we hope that our clients remember us and refer us. But we don't have a very strong value proposition to be able then to demand or require that our clients, upon deciding to use us, agree to certain things, and one of which is to commit to referring us to the people they care about. Because let's be honest with ourselves. We all believe that we provide a higher level of service than anybody at a big bank, anybody at a credit union, and anybody at a discount shop. Is that fair?
Fair.
In our hearts, we believe that we are better than most. I believe that when a client sits down in front of me, I don't want them to do a mortgage with me until I've convinced them that I'm the best person for them to figure out if I'm the best choice based on information that I give them. I'm not interested in taking them on as clients unless I can deliver on what I promise and help them exceed their expectations. And that's the beauty of this whole triangle of trust mindset, is that it puts you into the position of saying to your clients, you know what, Mr. and Mrs. Client, as much as I know that you're sitting here trying to interview me to decide if I'm the right person for your, to help you with your financing, I'm also very, very particular on the clients that I take on. Not that I don't want to work with you, but my business is completely referred to me. And my clients always go back to the referral source and say thank you. And many of them turn into raving fans, and they tell the people they care about me. And I can't get that to happen if I'm not capable of delivering on what your wants, goals, and needs are. So I'm going to ask you some really thought-provoking questions. We're going to really dig into this. But before we get into that, I need you to understand that that's what I need. Is that something that you're comfortable with? Is that after we go through this process, if I decide that I'm not the right person, I'll let you know. And if you decide that I'm not the right person, you're free to let me know. Is that something that we can agree on before we continue? There had never been a client that said no to me in that respect. There were clients that we decided we weren't going to be a good fit, but I pointed them in the right direction because I was still wanting them to go back to the person who referred them and say thank you. But more often than not, they became clients that agreed to work with me. And they didn't agree to work with me because I had the cheapest interest rates, that I had the cheapest fees. And frankly, and I know Suzanne knows this, I was the worst loan officer on the planet. I'm not a very good LO. And the definition of a loan officer to me is somebody who understands the tactical side of the business, going from the origination 1003 and to closing and handling all the stuff in between. I was an amazingly great originator, which I could go out and originate relationships, but you put me in front of a 1003, you put me in front of chasing conditions, ordering appraisals, looking for 4506Ts, getting VOEs, VODs, LOXs, and all that stuff. I was horrible at it. I caused more problems for my processing and my assistant if I got involved in the files that I frankly stayed away. But what I was really good at was originating relationships. And most of our clients don't agree to work with us because of our loan officer abilities. They agree to work with us because of our ability to communicate our value in a way that they recognize and believe that we believe. So the whole goal in this class or these calls is really to start teaching you and helping you learn to be proficient in these conversations. And the beauty of it is that when you're able to articulate your value in a very clear and concise and confident way, your clients start to recognize why they want to use you. And when you know why they want to use you, you know why you're the right person for the job. So in every conversation that you guys are having with your audience, if you're not the first person bringing up the question of, I'm sure you're thinking or wondering why you should use me for your mortgages, then you're devaluing your ability to be a consultant. See, a consultant is somebody that already knows the questions and already knows what the audience is thinking before they do. That's why I trusted the guy at Home Depot so much. I believed that he was a consultant. He knew what I wanted to do, but he knew all the intricacies. So all the questions that I eventually would have to think of through the process, he thought of for me and brought it out, which made me trust him even more. So if we're sitting in front of our audience and we're not the first person that brings up, I'm sure you're looking at me wondering why I'm the right person for the job. Or you're probably wondering, I've only been in the business for a year, why would I want to do loans with you? If you're not able to answer those questions for yourself, you're losing your ability to amplify your strength of being a consultant. And the consultant is somebody that's not after a lead. A consultant is somebody whose job isn't to close loans. It's to help answer the questions that the consumer or your audience has to get them to believe that you know what their challenges, issues are, and you understand what their wants, goals, and needs are. Too often, we show up into conversations and just simply lean on people. We talk about I, me, I. And frankly, that's not a value proposition. And so what I'm hoping over the next several weeks with all of us on the call is that we learn to develop a strategy that makes us more referable, and it makes us more attractive to our audience, not by doing anything different, because what we all are really good LOs, except me. What you guys are all really good LOs, but I need to teach you how to become exceptional originators. And it starts with understanding that the only thing that makes you different than anybody else is the words that come out of your mouth. And that's what this whole mindset class is about. And then eventually over the next several weeks, we'll eventually get into tracking leads and looking at conversion ratios, but there's no point in doing that until I know that what you guys are saying out there is actually worth what you guys value yourselves as. So one of the homework assignments that I gave everybody a couple weeks ago, Scott, was the first thing is to understand your value, and understand how good of a job you really do for your clients. How many times a day do you think you hear the word thank you or some kind of an acknowledgement from your clients?
It's really important.
One or two.
One or two?
Correct.
Okay. How do you respond with that? Like when somebody says, "Hey Scott, thank you for calling. I appreciate the information." What is your response?
My response is, well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. And then I try to take that a next step and see if I'm referable to them from somebody else.
Hey, Suzanne. Hey, Suzanne, are you still on the call?
Yeah, I'm here.
What do we think about the word try in these calls?
We don't use the word try. We will.
We do or we don't?
We don't use the word. I don't use the word try. I'm deliberate.
Yep. We don't use the word try because there's only one thing that we do or we don't do. And so I want you to change up that response just a little bit because you still believe that you're not quite referable enough. So you try to take the conversation the other way. If I taught you or could give you the tools that made it so that every time you heard the word thank you, you could stop at that moment and go, I know that they were going to say that because I quote unquote orchestrated the situation and you knew before you talked to them that you were going to get a thank you. And I could coach you on the ways to respond so that it was natural for you to go, hey Scott, thanks for noticing. My team and I work really hard at making your home buying process as easy as possible. You remember I told you that my business is 100% referred to me, and I count on people just like you to refer me to the people you care about. So could you just make me a promise again? You're not going to keep me a secret? Do you think that response is slightly different than the one that you give?
Yeah, just 100%.
Why is it different than what you do?
Well, you're more of you're taking the consultant role, and I'm taking more of the sales approach.
You are an order taker, or as I refer to it, we are tools. I mean, for lack of a better term, a consumer shows up and believes that we're a tool. And they believe that we're a tool because they believe that every loan officer at every bank, at every rate bank or any place online, that the product is all the same. And the only way to differentiate between the products is based on rate and fees. That's why the consumer doesn't know what they don't know, because that's the only thing they have to compare us against. Because our competition believes that's the only thing that separates us. But we all know from our experience that there's a lot more stuff that goes into buying a home than most people even realize, right?
Absolutely.
And I go back to that whole building landscaping steps. I had no idea that I needed to put a 4-foot rebar stake at the corner of every one of my steps in order to keep it from falling off after the next winter. You know how I would have found that out? After it was too late. So instead, I had a gentleman explain that to me, and it just, again, amplified my trust in him and belief that I was with the right person. But we don't even spend enough time defining our ability to be a consultant. To your point, Scott, we show up and just try to be the salesperson. Well, consumers don't want a salesperson. The consumer wants somebody that they can trust, that wants to help them. And to be honest, if they find that, they're all willing to pay a little bit more. I'm willing to bet you I could have found my materials and probably saved 20 to 30% on the overall cost of what I spent. But looking back at it, do you think I would have wanted to have to save 30% on my costs if it meant that I was leaving my house every half hour, going up to Lowe's, Home Depot, or Menards to try and find the pieces of the puzzle that I was trying to build in my backyard? That 30% savings was well worth it, so I didn't have the aggravation and the stress and the frustration. Who else hears me on that? Who else believes that that's something that's valuable to our clients?
I hear you. I hear you.
So the only thing that we really need to focus on is we need to play the role of being a consultant more. And the way you get your audience to believe that you're a consultant is by getting them to realize that your value is amplifying not the loan process at that moment, it's amplifying the relationship to the person that brought you to them. And the cool part is that if somebody's calling you on an endorsement from somebody else, you've already created a raving fan in somebody. And do you know how easy it is to create another raving fan when somebody who else is a raving fan puts you in touch with them? It's easy. It's so easy. And it starts off by asking simple questions. Scott, what was it about me that Brian said to you that made you want to call me?
I have a lot of respect for Brian, and to me, Brian is like a marketing genius, how he gets these phones to ring and the leads that come in here. So, you know, I believe in what he does. So when he said, hey, this could help your business, I'm like, all right, I'm on it. And I called you like immediately because I like and trust Brian.
So you already have an understanding of how my belief system is wired because Brian and I have a relationship, right?
Correct.
How much of a job do I have to sell you on attending these calls now?
You don't have to sell me.
Guys, this is how it works with your clients. This is no different. The psychology of how this works, I don't have to sell myself. I just have to play the role of the consultant because I'm leaning on the relationship that Brian and I and Scott and Brian have. And if I do right by Scott, I'm going to amplify the relationship between Scott and Brian and I. And if I can do that every time I meet a client, I will never go wrong. And I will continue to expand my business. And I will do it in a way where I'm only talking to people that want to work with me, that know me, like me, and trust me. My career in 2012 ended when I was generating 30+ leads a month. And you know how I got those leads? And not this today's call, but next week I'll pull up my spreadsheet because I track my leads. I track my leads since 2001. My lead tracker has a lead sheet. I track every lead, where it came from, the source, and what ended up happening with it.
Hello.
Hello? Who's there? Dan, is that you, buddy?
I'm here.
Okay. The point is that our goal in business is to work with people who like us, who know us, who trust us. And if you're getting a raving fan to put you in touch with a new potential client, it doesn't take much to actually earn their trust because they already trust you just from the simple relationship that you had. But we don't spend any time focusing on that. We don't spend any time laying the groundwork so that our audience believes what we believe. And if you paint out that picture to your audience, do you really think there's another loan officer on the planet that's going to be able to compete against that? Now,
No.
You will always have shoppers. Those are the people that when I make the comment of, after I'm done consulting, if I believe that I'm not the right person for the job, or after we're done consulting, if you believe I'm not the right person for the job, we can shake hands, part as friends, and we'll go on our separate ways. But my number one goal is to get you to go back to Brian and say thank you. At the end of those meetings, I know who the shoppers were. I know who the people were that were just seeking information. And then I made the decision consciously that this isn't for me. This isn't going to expand my brand. I'm not going to waste 45 days with somebody who's going to shop me against guaranteed rate and then pull out at the last minute. It's not for me. But I did always get them to go back to the referral source and say thank you, which is my main purpose, especially as a consultant. My loan officer hat would come on when they agreed to work with me, and then that was their job. The loan officer part of my team was responsible to close the loan. But my job as the originator was to get them to believe in my process and the way that I do business. I was never a mega producer, but I did produce a business that every month I woke up and I had to answer phone calls. I didn't make many outbound calls to people who didn't know me, like me, and trust me. I answered phone calls from people who said, hey, Scott, you called me. Scott, hey, Doug, this is Scott Coward. Hey, Brian Metner wanted me to reach out to you and see if I can sign up for your coaching call. Here you are. I didn't really have to convince you to show up. That's how it's with your clients. It's no different. It's such an amazingly simple process, but we don't do it intentionally and consistently. And we wonder why our business doesn't have the results that we want. And I think and believe a large part of it is that we don't have a very clear value proposition. So what I'd like to do with everybody on the call next week is kind of break out my kind of like my five bullet point opening process on how I introduced myself to every client that I met. I did a building rapport. I did a permission to reject. I talked about the triangle of trust. I did the whole "you're going to hate me" speech, and then I did the agreement conversation. So we'll get into that more in detail next week. But what I want you guys to do, especially you, Scott, is now moving forward, every time you hear the word thank you, just between now and next week, I want you to respond with thanks for noticing. My team and I work really hard to help you go through this process with as least amount of stress as possible. Remember, I'm going to count on you for a referral, especially to somebody you care about. Please don't keep me a secret. Now, I record this call, and you'll get the replay. Everybody will that's on the call. You'll get the replay. But I want you to practice that because that's going to be your first acknowledgement of how good of a job you really do for your clients. And if you can understand how good of a job you do, it'll make it easier for you to believe that you're providing value beyond just being a really good loan officer. Is that fair?
Yes, sir.
Awesome. What do you think, Scott? Is that something you want to participate in?
Absolutely.
What did you take away from today's call?
Well, a lot of things, and I have a lot of notes. But the biggest thing I think I took away is that we sometimes make this way harder than it needs to be. And we have people that we like and trust, and we don't appreciate them maybe as much, and we're always going out looking for new people, looking for new realtors, looking for new leads when we have so much right in our database that those people already like and trust us.
What does it say about what does it say about your value system? Does it align with what you believe? Does what I share with you and what everybody on the call believes, does it align with your value system?
100%.
Okay. Do you believe that these kind of conversations will help amplify your business and create better and more meaningful and deeper relationships with greater opportunities to see fruits of your labor, meaning more referrals?
For sure.
Awesome. Can you do me a huge favor, brother?
Thank Brian.
You got it.
All right. Good.
Sure.
So Scott, do you understand? Do you see how compelled you are to do this? I mean, you're more than happy to hang up and go tell Brian about this call, and I don't feel like I'm forcing you to do it or having to make you do it. The beauty of it is that because I provided you a value and I am simply speaking from the heart and what I believe, you're more than happy to go tell Brian. And I'm telling you guys right now, for everybody that's on the call, it's the same thing when you talk to a realtor, and it's the same thing when you talk to any referral partner, and it's the same thing when you talk to a client. If you get them to see the value of the relationship that they have with the person that they're either going to refer to you or go back to and say thank you to, you create a dynamic that they've never experienced before. But yet every client, every human being gets it. Every human being believes that if something is at stake that's bigger than you and I, then that means you do really care because you see the bigger picture. You become a bigger and stronger consultant when you do it. Fair?
Yes, sir. Very fair.
Awesome. Anybody have any questions for me?
Hey, Doug.
Hey, what's up there, Mr. Schwambach?
Yeah, I was at a networking meeting this morning, so I got on the phone at 10:30, actually 10:31, so I was a minute late. But
No sweat.
I don't know if you knew I was even listening, but once I got home, I jumped on the computer. But I got quite, it was a networking event for something. I'm in a magazine as an advertiser, so all the advertisers were at this networking meeting. So I didn't realize I was going to get up and talk, but I wish I would have, had I known, I probably would have prepared a little bit. So I just kind of stuck to the fact that I'm a VA specialist because,
yep.
Narrowing in on something kind of sticks out more than, I do loans, yada, yada, whatever. So, but the one thing after, thinking about it, I probably should have done something, along the lines of, the three things you talked about. I'm a consultant, I'm a negotiator, I'm a manager of people's fears and expectations, that type of thing. But if you've got a 15 to 30-second, well, let's call it a 30-second elevator speech, how would you do that in a networking event so that you come across as a consultant?
So I belong to so many networking events, and to be honest, it's funny because most of them I got fired out of. I got fired out of it because I got sick and tired of being around people who always ask for referrals but weren't referable. There's a difference. I mean, let's be clear. Many people are always looking for new business and they always would love a referral, but many of those people don't know what makes them referable, thus they are not referable. And I know you guys all know people in your life who you go, you're just not a referable person. And I don't mean that in a negative way, just we know that they don't value our reputation well enough to do a really good job. They're more, they have a different mindset. So my elevator speech was somewhat of a cliche, but it always got people thinking because I always thought it was a really good opening speech. And it said, you'll never care how much I know till you know how much I care. And I said, to you guys, that sounds like a cliche. To me, it talks about what I consider to be the triangle of trust philosophy that I built my business around. And I believe that my job is to amplify relationships between the people that I know and the people they know. I believe that my number one goal is to make you happy and have better relationships because you know me. So what I mean by that is if you ever feel compelled to want to refer somebody to me, I promise that they will always come back to you and say thank you. And if I can do that with every person that I meet, not only am I making the world a better place, but I'm also increasing your chances of having better relationships with people. And by default, at some point, I might close a few loans because I'm doing the right thing by you.
Sounds very good. I like it.
What did you hear me say in that conversation? And I don't know if it was 30 seconds or not, but what did you take away from that statement there, Dan?
Well, just that you're not talking about yourself as a mortgage guy. You're talking about yourself as a relationship builder between you and the person that was with you.
We're not. We don't wake up every day being mortgage people. We do mortgages because that's what pays us. Clients don't use us because we do mortgages. Clients work with us because we care about what they believe in. They can go out there and find a mortgage anywhere. But why do our clients use us? You know, go back to that Facebook post that I talked about family with, and how I believe, just like that interview I did with that realtor, that most borrowers prefer to work with somebody that they know, or a friend or a relative, because of the association of values. People don't care about price and rate as much as they care about values. I'm going to buy a home, and it is the largest investment of my life, and frankly, it scares the crap out of me because I don't know what goes on, and there's really nothing I can do about it. So I'm going to go out there and talk to my family and get their perspective. Most of them are going to have, well, you got to go to the bank because they have the best rates and they have the best fees. You're not going to get them to call you back, but that's just kind of the way it is. Or they're going to go, I worked with Doug Catteray. The guy's awesome. He built his business on relationships, and I was so happy that I told my mom how great of a job he did, and he did the same thing for my mom. And I referred my cousin, the same thing. And you need to go talk to him because I promise you're going to have a great experience. And how much of a value proposition is that when they call you? Hey, Scott, Brian said that I should talk to you. I need help with buying a house. He said you did a great job and you took care of it. And I've never bought a home before, or the last home process I went through was horrible. And my wife and I are trying to buy a home because she's pregnant. And I'm just trying. I was hoping that you could help me. How much more of a sales job do you really need to do? None. You simply have to be a consultant and find out what their goals, wants, and needs are and deliver on it. And you'll find that the commodities of our business become a distant 5th, 6th, and 7th in the line of order of importance on why I'm working with you guys. And this is how you're going to grow your business with your realtors and any other referral partners, because again, if you can make a realtor look good in front of their clients, and you get that client to call the realtor back and say thank you every time, whether you get a loan from that client or not, your realtors become addicted to that because nobody else gets their clients to call them and say thank you. That's the secret sauce, guys.
Amen, brother.
Make sense? Amen, brother. Exercise the demons. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. I'll convert the recording, send you guys all off the replay. Dan's on the call. Scott's on the call. Suzanne, you're on the call. Is there anybody else? That's it? Just 3 of you guys? Wonderful. Okay, guys. I'll send you the replay in a little bit. If you guys have any questions, obviously give me a call. But again, thanks for spending a little bit of time with me today. I know you guys are all super busy, and I'm honored, as always, to be a part of your success.
Hey, thanks for
Thank you. Have a good
guys,
day. Thank
have a great week.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.